You're listening to Remotely One, a podcast that educates, entertains, and inspires you to take your life back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a former beer rep who left the warehouse to become a voice actor and digital creator.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds awesome. Let's clock in. This episode is kindly presented by Troop HR. Join the Troop at troophr.com.
Where are you originally from?
New Jersey.
Oh, she was born in Jersey.
I was.
She's a Jersey girl.
Yeah.
Can you sing Jersey Girls at all?
Not at all. I have not lived in New Jersey in 25 years. So I've lived outside of Jersey longer than I've lived in Jersey at this point. But I have family there, so I visit frequently.
Okay.
Do you feel that Jersey Shore was well represented of the people of New Jersey?
Absolutely.
Ooh, good question.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Sadly,
Okay.
absolutely.
Sadly,
All right.
absolutely. I'm hearing your accent come in. A little bit more Jersey's coming out.
Yeah. I think about like going to the supermarket and that's what you see. It
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look,
That's
now I'm
amazing.
going back to when that show just launched, but like, and I never went to those bars, but like all those bars and things, I mean, I'm definitely older than those people, but like that was totally what people I knew did. So I get it.
Wow. Welcome back to Remotely One. I am your co-host, Rick Haney, joined by my esteemed co-host and colleague, Kaleem Clarkson. What's happening, brother?
What's going on, bro? You're right. You are a co-host. I'm a co-host and you're a co-host. How you doing, baby? You look
50-50, baby.
50-50 in this beer. You look great, bro. You look great.
We're going to change the name to 50-50. We are one. So, hey, everybody. Welcome back. And since you know how to find us now, do us a huge favor. Go to ratethispodcast.com/remotely one and leave us a review. That's all we ask. Nothing major. Again, ratethispodcast.com/remotely one. If you could do that, we would be ever so thankful. Since 2015, Remotely One is one of the largest communities of remote work professionals, with over 2,800 Slack members and 4,000 email subscribers. Those numbers are climbing by the day, if I may say so.
Yes, they
It
are.
is free to join, so go ahead and check it out, remotely1.com. And with those things out of the way, Kaleem, tell us a little bit about our guest.
Oh, bro, I'm so nerved up, bro, as usual, man. I just got the
Oh,
juices
yeah.
flowing.
Yeah.
First off, she was born in Jersey, son. She was born in Jersey.
Oh, gee.
And she told us the Jersey Shore, that stuff on TV, that issue's a real thing. It's real. Jersey Shore.
I don't believe it.
Guess, what was the saying? Did you say tans and what? What's the saying, guest?
Gym, tan, and laundry.
Now we're talking.
GTL.
That's it.
GTL, Jim Stanley. I love it. She's now a resident of the city, aka Manhattan, for all you people who don't know who or where the city is. So she's now a New Yorker, officially. Our guest today, Rick, she beats shit, man. She beats stuff. She's a breast cancer survivor. Kudos to you, guest. Kudos to you.
Champion.
Really good stuff there.
Love to hear that.
Okay, she's worked for a Procter & Gamble company. She's worked for a venture-based startup and was the VP of Business Development at a company called Sherpa. She is a professional performing singer, but she has a horrible singing voice, she says. Shout out to her son, who can't stand her singing. So she's a horrible singer. She's a founding member of the Forbes Business Development Council. No big deal. No big deal.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's why I'm nervous, bro. That's why I'm nervous.
I know. I'm nervous, too.
She is the founder of Troop HR, which is a community for people leaders. You should see some of the names of the companies that are part of this community. You have to check it out. Listeners and viewers, please give a warm welcome to Tracy Avin. Let's go!
Ooh, with the long A. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Let's go, Tracy. Let's go.
Thank you. That was quite a
Yes.
welcome. Thank you so much.
Well, we do it right. We're glad to have you. We have so many questions, and I'm excited to get into it. But, I have to know, was there a point in your history that you just knew remote work was going to be for you? And, was it kind of like a spark that ignited your career and that led to where you are now?
Yes, there is actually. So,
Okay.
I mean, I know Kaleem has been in this remote world since long before it was common in the workplace, but going back, ooh, maybe around 6 years ago now, I had been working for a company and my husband got a role out in California. And I was working for the company in New York City at the time. And a little bit of an old school org. So, I had to either go in and resign or work remotely from California when the company was headquartered in New York. And I actually sought some counsel from some of my HR friends and family and said, how do you think I should approach this? And I got some really great advice from a close friend of mine who said, just go in and ask for it on a trial basis. A trial basis is open for everyone. And if it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul. If it does, then you now have proven another way for people to work within your organization. And so that's exactly what I did. My boss actually said to me, I thought you were coming in for one of three things, he added to. So, one, you're quitting. Two, you're moving to California because he knew my husband was there, or three, you're getting a divorce. And so I said, I'm glad it's that I'm moving to California. And I asked, can we do this on a trial basis? And he was very open minded to it. So I wound up moving out to California and working remotely back in, wow, it was 2016, 17, very successfully. Upon coming back to New York, another colleague of mine at the organization was moving to Florida. And she said, you opened the door for me to be able to work remotely from Florida.
Wow.
And again, this is before COVID was even a thought in anyone's mind. And
Right,
so I
right.
think it was at that point that I realized, the remote work thing is if you have a good work ethic and you're committed to the work that you're doing, it really doesn't matter where you are to do that. And so that was my first experience with remote work.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So when you decided to kind of have this discussion, do you remember any of kind of the points that you brought up? Like, hey, I could, for some of our listeners who may be in this same position, because we're hearing a lot
Mm-hmm.
about return to offices, right? Like, you must come back into the office. You got to come back into the office. Do you remember any of the discussion points that you kind of led with? Obviously, you probably had a little coaching ahead of time. So,
Definitely.
do you remember any?
Yeah, so I'm going to double down. Do it on a trial basis. Let's
Yep.
test the
Yep.
waters, set an amount of time around that, right? You should have check-in points. So it shouldn't just be let's try this and go. It should be like let's do a 3 or 6 month trial basis. We'll check in monthly. We'll see if I'm hitting the goals. The other thing that I came forward with was what my achievements to that point have been, as I had already proven myself
Well
as a
done.
really strong contributor to the workplace in the role that
Right.
I was in. And so to be able to come and say, this is what I've achieved since I've been here, and then to even put some objectives out there, like this is what I plan for the next 6 months, so that when we do have those check-ins for the trial basis, to prove that yes, this is working. And then the other
Mm.
thing is just to make sure there's open lines of communication, whatever that may be. If I communicate with you over text, then don't connect with me on Slack. You know what I mean? Because you want to be able to have that open communication. I don't know if I said that in any kind of order, but those are the key points that I had going into the conversation. And I think
Mm.
because I was organized with my thoughts, this is an important part of it, because it wasn't just like, hey, can we chat, but organized thoughts, that it was a much more productive conversation that led to positive results for both myself and the
Wow.
company.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, unlike most of the world that had to adapt, a lot of people working remotely now are only working remotely because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But you predated all of that, and you were able to see things from a different perspective than most everybody else. So, did you find yourself in a position of like immediate leadership because you already had that experience? And were you able to translate that to other people who just were forced to do it and weren't sure how to go about it?
So, yes and no. I'll start with the no first, because I'm also a mom. And so not only were we thrown into having to work from home, but at the time I now had a second grader at home with me, and he was part of the
Oh,
New York City Department of Education, and trying to figure out how do we manage the classroom setting and making sure that his needs were met. So that's the no side of it. And that was just trial and error and figuring it out like the rest of us. The yes was because, no matter what the circumstances are, when things pop up, I like to act quick on my feet. Obviously, you want to be thoughtful about things, but when this all happened, I had a lot of friends and colleagues reaching out with challenges that they were immediately facing, be it furloughs for their workforce, first having a distributed workforce and wanting to be in compliance with what that means for different payroll requirements. And so, very quickly, I activated my network and I connected with folks in employment law. I connected with folks that dealt with coaching and supporting workplace wellness in order to deliver content and resources to other people. And by the other people, I'm talking about primarily human resources professionals. And so, without naming any names, we were getting online and going to some of the legacy organizations' webinars, and they were talking about how commutes had changed. And this is April 2020. And we're all sitting there in New York and California saying, commutes, we're under quarantine. What are you talking about?
right,
How do we
right.
deal with that piece of it? And so
Yeah.
we actually wound up scheduling weekly webinars with an employment attorney who was just giving regular updates on what we should be thinking about, how we should be approaching things, and just kind of setting people up for the best success in this sort of uncharted territory that we were all in together.
Interesting how you transition from being a person that just presented remote work to their boss. And just kind of going back to that, I just really love the fact that you articulated what it is that you had accomplished already. I think that's really important for our listeners and viewers. If you're going to go in and try to pitch these things, go in with an organized plan, get some time on the calendar, make it be a meeting, and be prepared to highlight those things. And then now you're kind of in a leadership position and people are reaching out to you, asking questions about how do we move forward. At what point in that space did you decide to start Troop HR? So can you talk to us a little bit about what Troop HR is and how did that idea kind of sprout from you working remotely?
Yeah, absolutely. As I had spent the first 10 years of my career working for large enterprise orgs, pharma, subsidiary of P&G, and then transitioned to this 10-person health tech startup. And this is an important part of the story because it was culture shock, as it would be, going from a company with thousands of people to 10. And this was back in 2013, and we were in the on-demand healthcare space, which is common now, but in 2013, most people didn't even know what that meant. And our clients were other tech startups. And so I started becoming friends with a lot of them, getting an understanding of what, their benefits needs are. And I said to one of them, wouldn't it be great if we could all just get together and share ideas and best practices? And wound up hosting a small dinner with about 15 HR leaders from tech startups. And then very informally, over the course of the next 10 years or so, would host these quarterly dinners and breakfasts. Again, very informally, but just bringing people leaders together to share ideas. And so fast forward, when COVID happens, I had built this community, very grassroots, but I had built this community and became known as a resource. And all the while, my husband was on the side saying, you should do something more with this. You should do something more. And I never saw it. And then COVID happened. And all of a
Okay.
sudden, the world was connected over Zoom or Google Meets,
Mm.
whatever your
Yep.
preferred
Yeah.
provider is. And I saw it. And I said, wow, this is how we connect. We can connect and share ideas and resources in a more meaningful way. And rather than me just being that one center resource, we could all be resources to each other. And so going back to that point, for me, coming up with Troop HR, yes, obviously focused on HR leaders, but it's not just about HR education. It's about how we can support each other as professionals and just elevate each other in our roles as leaders. And so that is something that I learned really fast during COVID. And in order to sort of test out the hypothesis, I wound up interviewing over 50 HR leaders to get a better idea of what is it you're looking for in community? What types of resources do you need or are you hoping to gain?
We'll be right back after these words.
In a world where the role of HR has never been more important to a company's success, it's time to join together and maximize our impact as leaders. Troop HR is a national network for HR leaders to learn, connect, and elevate their careers amongst top talent from leading organizations. If you value real-world experience and practical takeaways, our workshops, seminars, and speaker series are led by HR and business leaders who share hard-earned insights from their own experiences. It's this approach that allows all members to connect on a personal and professional level. But don't just take our word for it. Our partners include Forbes, Walmart, Amazon, Zoom, Stripe, the New York Times, MasterCard, and Lyft. And that's just to name a few. Nothing supercharges your career more than applied expertise and an incredible network of peers and mentors. Find Troop HR on LinkedIn or contact them directly at hello@troophr.com.
And now back to the show.
So in regard to HR as a whole, I mean, you've worked with a lot of different people in a lot of different industries. What would you say are the most popular topics in remote work at this time from that perspective?
So, if we're talking specifically remote work, the three top ones I would say are engagement, managing leave, and compensation. And I could dive deeper into any of those as to why they're hot topics as you like.
So when you say compensation, does that mean in terms of like pay equity from someone living in San Francisco versus somebody living in Omaha?
Exactly. So, the pay structures have evolved over the past few years because people have moved around. And historically, there was a geography tied to a lot of the ways that people accounted for compensation for folks. And so now if you have someone who maybe their home address is SF, but they're living in Omaha, but you were compensating them SF because the cost of living is higher, but now they're in Omaha. And so that's definitely been a topic, like how do we manage this now and make it equitable for everyone? So yes, that's the compensation piece of it.
For compensation, I'm still torn. Just my personal opinion. Like, I understand that in a perfect world, maybe you just pay the same rate no matter where you are. But it's so much more complicated than that because you are paying somebody a wage for them to kind of live a certain level of happiness, you know what I mean? Like a certain amount of disposable income in that area. And it's just one of the biggest topics that I think is such a challenging piece. On to the engagement piece. I'm just curious, like you're hosting these events and we have people, larger companies, smaller companies. What are people doing? What are HR professionals really doing these days to keep their remote employees engaged? What have the discussions been around to keep their remote employees engaged?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, we've seen a growing rise of offsites or on-sites where you have this distributed workforce and you're bringing the team together to where maybe the corporate headquarters used to be so that they can meet in person and engage. The other thing that we've seen a lot of, especially over the past 6 to 12 months, has been supporting teams and connecting and getting together. And so just as an example, maybe you have your HR team and half are on the East Coast, some are in the Midwest and some are on the West Coast. And so geographically you're distributed, but perhaps there's a way you can connect together as a team in a more social setting, talking about things outside of work. And I know not everyone wants to like blur those lines as much. And so you give as much as you can, but to be able to foster relationships amongst team members beyond the work discussion. And it doesn't have to be so detailed. It could be high level if you don't want to get too personal, but getting to know people the same way we used to get people when we would be around the water cooler or we would be at lunch together. And then the other thing that we've seen grow significantly are ERGs or employee resource groups, which are centered around different areas of either identification or things that people connect with socially. And so that's been another great way to get to know people on a more meaningful way or in a more meaningful way. And then, at Troop, one of the things we do, and I think like there are hits and misses, but we do monthly social events, and we
Okay.
try to get creative with them. So it's not the same, oh, let's do a wine tasting. Last month we did doodling for stress. The month before that, we did salsa making. So trying to just like mix it up a little so it's not the same thing that we've all done before. We did one where we were building terrariums together, things that we can connect with on a level outside of the work discussion has been really effective. And then, of course, going back to what I originally say, if you can, to facilitate an offsite or an onsite where you do bring people together to meet in person, even if it's not on a regular basis.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely community. Yeah.
Yeah, well, speaking of community, I want to dive a little bit deeper into this because I'm really interested when we talk about building communities remotely. You touched a little bit on the challenges of that, but how does Troop HR, at what point do you decide, okay, this is how we're going to bring people together in person?
Yep.
Ooh, yeah. So you started an online community.
Yep.
You talked about some of those tools. Love that. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so we are a virtual first community. We do not see a world where that will change. And that's because, one, our members are so distributed, and two, because it's what works for them. However, like you said, we are in this post-COVID world now, and those in-person connections do matter. And so what we've started to do is this past year, we launched our first annual member retreat, which is a 3-day event.
Awesome.
Focused on professional development and networking for troop members. We have started to host some small group dinners in local metropolitan areas where we have a presence. And just last week, at the suggestion of one of our members, we launched something called Happy Hour Huddles. We're all about alliteration at Troop.
Okay.
I love it.
Our huddles are virtual member-led discussion groups. However,
I like that.
One of our members in Brooklyn said, hey, what if we did a happy hour? And mind you, it doesn't mean that there has to be alcohol, because the 3/4 of them were all drinking mocktails. So just kind of getting together in person and having fun. And so he came back to me and said, you know what, that was a big success. I'd like to do a monthly version of that in different areas in New York City Metro. And I said, great. And so Troop actually sponsors those events for our members to come together. And then we obviously posted about it in the forum. And since we did that a week ago, we had someone from Chicago reach out to set one up, someone from Atlanta to reach out and set one up. I was just texting before this call with someone in the Austin area. So I think, and this goes back to the remote, you got to meet people where they are. And so that's an easy lift. It doesn't interrupt from people's workday. It's something that's not mandated, but at their convenience if they want to join. And Troop HR is here to support them if they do want to come together. And I think the capstone event of all of that is this retreat that we've created. And we're in process now of organizing next year's retreat, which will be in the spring again.
Yeah, I was so bummed out that I couldn't go to the retreat. I was like, oh, I can't wait to meet you in person. But we did get a chance to meet out at Transform. Thank you, by the way. It was really, really fun. We had Rajib Day on the podcast from Learnably. We were talking about, I had a really good time out there in Vegas. So before Rick kind of asked the question of the show, so what was the retreat like? Like, what was the purpose of the retreat, and what were some of the things that were happening there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was very different than a typical conference. One, we chose a location where we felt that our members could be part of the elements and really dive into their personal wellness. And so for us, it was important not to bring people down to a 3-day event where they sat in a room with 4 walls. So we very thoughtfully planned the program out that all of our meals would be together and they would all be outside so that we could be part of the environment. We also made sure on the program that it was really focused on professional development topics. So a lot of times conferences can be vendor driven, understandably, they're businesses. This was focused on what is the benefit for our members. And yes, we had sponsors, but the sponsors were in the background versus being the center exhibit hall. And then the other thing we did is within the schedule, we included downtime. I actually just got off of a Zoom this morning with one of our members who was giving me some feedback. And she said, my favorite part of the event was the half a day you left with cabanas by the pool. And not because we were swimming in our bathing suits, but because we actually got to make these meaningful connections with one another. And for us, that's really what Troop HR is all about. It's about, like I think about like $1 Million Show, where like your phone a friend group. And like, it's about this community where it is a close-knit community and you can build relationships, and our members coming together and actually meeting in person just escalated their ability to connect with one another. And so I know even coming out of that, just found out from her that they started their own little group, not like a community, but like they go for drinks once a month together. That they met each other at the retreat, and they didn't realize that they all lived in the same area. So
you're a connector,
amazing.
Tracy. Yeah. You're a connector. You've done that before. I guarantee you came up as a connector, didn't you?
For sure.
Well, that's great.
I really appreciate it. And for all listeners and viewers, I'm a little biased. I am a member. Just as a member, the value that I find as an HR professional is literally just people to listen. You post, it's very well done. I'm sorry, Tracy, I'm just take your compliments right now, but it's very well organized. And I'm not just saying this because she's on our show. I would rip her if it sucked, but it doesn't. I'd rip her right on the show. Like, your community stinks, but it doesn't stink. It's really well done. You can post in these different channels. People respond, especially if you have these remote work challenges. I just love how responsive everyone in the community is, and you can really get some difficult questions and a lot of different feedback. That's what I've fully enjoyed. So if you're a people ops or an HR professional, definitely check out Troop HR. It's worth every penny, the membership, for sure.
Definitely.
Thanks.
So Tracy,
Yeah.
since we're on the subject of human connections, part of the human connections is people sharing stories with one another about real life occasions that occur. I don't even know what I'm saying there, but occasions do occur.
That occur.
Yeah. We're talking about real life, and real life right now is me not knowing how to use words. So, so part of that connection is, like I said, sharing stories. So can you share with us something about working remotely that you will never forget? Something that may be inspiring or comical or maybe even a little bit embarrassing. Who knows?
Yeah, as you said that, I just thought about the months that I was on Zoom in my pajamas. Like, I don't know why we couldn't get dressed. And two, the storage of an excessive amount of food and supplies on the credenza in my living room. That was the backdrop of my Zoom, because, we really didn't know what was going on. And I just remember we had like, my kitchen pantry had like 10x in size and was the background of my Zoom, because I live in an apartment in New York City. So that's where it was. And so, this is talking about off the cuff. That's completely off the cuff. It's like, what was I thinking?
Oh, I love it.
So you're on like a huge Zoom call, like the CEO or the chief people officer from Zoom, and you have a 20-pack of toilet paper behind you, is what you're saying.
A lot of cereal boxes, but yes. Yes.
People are getting off the call, like chatting with their buddies. Hey, Carmine, did you see that credenza? It was chock full of supplies and shit. I couldn't believe it.
And she's in her pajamas.
How much toilet paper can somebody use? I mean,
Oh my God.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the backdrops of life. Everybody got a chance to see it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one. What pajamas would you roll with?
I have like 10 pairs of the same pajamas. They're actually quite nice. It's just like pants and a top that could look like a t-shirt. So, it was presentable.
In my mind, I was thinking you were in a zip-up onesie.
No.
You know what I mean?
With the slippers.
With the slippers.
With the footies on them.
And like a Smurf on there or something, a whole bunch of Smurfs, But,
not that creative, but yeah.
Well, he's just talking about his own collection of pajamas. So, Tracy, where can our listeners find you?
Well, troophr.com, absolutely. And always I'm welcoming of people to reach out to me, Tracy at troophr, TRACY. And I am on LinkedIn all the time too. So shoot me a note there, and it's just Tracy Avin on LinkedIn. Yeah, the one thing, and Kaleem knows this as a Troop member, everything that I do is about enhancing the member experience for our community. It's the member first, and we're in this for, the marathon, in that we are taking our time to build something that not only supports each other, but the role of the HR professional as we look into the future. And it's really important to us to have like-minded professionals be part of what we're building so that we can continue to grow and have an impact.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're crazy busy. Again, everybody, check out Troop HR, especially if you're an HR people ops professional. Tracy, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. I learned so much from you, as I knew I would. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you,
Talk to you later.
Talk soon.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
You've been listening to Remotely One. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.
This episode is kindly presented by Troop HR. Join the Troop at troophr.com.